Hi, my name is Shada Adiwume, and I will be discussing the prison system within America. Primarily, I will be discussing this essential question. While imprisoned, is the prison system efficiently rehabilitating its inhabitants? First, I will state my stance, how I will prove my point, introduce my information, then I will lead into the content of my material. In regards to my stance on the state of prisons in America, I stand on this point. I believe that our prisons, although they seem useful, are not entirely beneficial for not only the society but those that are inhabited within it. I believe that prisons do not serve the purpose that they were set out to do, and instead need to be redefined by our government. I will take information from both sides in order to prove that our government is not doing enough, not only to support these inhabitants while inside the prison system, but also outside of the prison system. I will be taking information from hd.org. I will be taking information from two TED Talks, a clip called the Stanford Prison Experiment, as well as many known facts about prisons within the United States. In addition, I have taken clips from the Chronicle of Houston, Texas, as well as the fact sheet that President Obama released under his new initiative about prisons. In addition, I have also sought out some information in regards to torture within the prison system. First, I would like to begin by examining the prison systems from the ground up. The definition of a prison is the following: a building or vessel in which people are legally held as a punishment for crimes they have committed or while awaiting trial. In today's prisons, a third of the country's black male population has been incarcerated at some point in their lives. This boils down to 1. A pipeline from underfunded schools being pushed into the prison system, and 2. The fact that many black males are being caught doing illegal activity, whereas other races are not, thus increasing the black male population within our prison system. Another fact about today's prisons is that we hold 25% of the world's prisoners in the United States. This means that we are putting people that shouldn't truly be behind bars within our prison system, as well as the fact that we are incarcerating the wrong people for unnecessary crimes. Lastly, the number of prisoners has quadrupled since 1980. There are currently 2.2 million prisoners, once again showing that we are truly not keeping prisoners behind bars, but those that we just need off the streets. More often than not, the definition of a prison is associated with being behind bars. Yet, as a society, we do not truly nor completely understand what life in prison truly means. In examining my essential question of, while imprisoned, is the prison system efficiently rehabilitating its inhabitants, I want to examine, does the prison system allow for readjustment? What is life after prison? What is life like in prison? Are they still put in mental cages? In order to analyze this question, I have taken a clip by Jeff Smith. It's a TED Talk called Lessons in Business from Prison to truly understand what life is like behind bars as well as the ingenuity that comes with it. Take a look.
It was my first week in federal prison, and I was learning quickly that it wasn't what you see on TV. In fact, it was teeming with smart, ambitious men whose business instincts were in many cases as sharp as those of the CEOs who had wined and dined me 6 months earlier when I was a rising star in the Missouri Senate. Now, 95% of the guys that I was locked up with had been drug dealers on the outside. But when they talked about what they did, they talked about it in a different jargon, but the business concepts that they talked about weren't unlike those that you'd learn in a first-year MBA class at Wharton. Promotional incentives, you never charge a first-time user. Focus grouping, new product launches. Territorial expansion. But they didn't spend a lot of time reliving the glory days. For the most part, everyone was just trying to survive. It's a lot harder than you might think. Contrary to what most people think, taxpayers don't pay for your life when you're in prison. You got to pay for your own life. You got to pay for your soap, your deodorant, toothbrush, toothpaste, all of it. And it's hard for a couple of reasons. First, everything's marked up 30 to 50% from what you'd pay in the street. And second, you don't make a lot of money. I unloaded trucks. That was my full-time job, unloading trucks at a food warehouse. for $5.25, not an hour, but per month. So how do you survive? We learn to hustle. So as you can probably tell, one of the defining aspects of prison life is ingenuity. Whether it was concocting delicious meals from stolen scraps from the warehouse, sculpting people's hair with toenail clippers, or constructing weights from boulders in laundry bags tied on to tree limbs, prisoners learn how to make do with less. And many of them want to take this ingenuity that they've learned to the outside and start restaurants, barbershops, personal training businesses. But there's no training, nothing to prepare them for that, no rehabilitation at all in prison. No one to help them write a business plan, figure out a way to translate the business concepts they intuitively grasp into legal enterprises, no access to the internet even. And then when they come out, most states don't even have a law prohibiting employers from discriminating against people with a background. So none of us should be surprised that 2 out of 3 ex-offenders reoffend within 5 years. I hope that you'll think about helping in some way. The best thing we can do is figure out ways to nurture the entrepreneurial spirit and the tremendous untapped potential in our prisons. Because if we don't, they're not going to learn any new skills that's going to help them, and they'll be right back. All they'll learn on the inside is new hustles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your story and speaking on the experience you had during your year in federal prison. Jeff highlights in his TED Talk the magnanimity of the issues within our prison system, from the fact that prisoners have no one helping them plan out their lives once they are out of prisons. And once they are actually out of the prison system, many jobs discriminate, causing these prisoners ultimately return to what they know, hustling, leading them back into the prison system. The prison system constricts those inside of a loop or a circle, filtering them in and out of the system by not providing them help while in prison, as well as life outside of prisons. Our prison system has left them with nothing. Once they go in, they are forgotten about, and once they come out, they are discriminated. Life in prison is all subject not only to the government, but to our warden. Like Jeff said, it's not all how TV portrays it. In fact, the psychological effects of prisons can turn relatively good men and women into evil monsters, as seen through the Stanford Prison Experiment held in the 1970s. I am unable to show the clip as I was unable to embed it into my video. However, I suggest looking up the clip. I still cited it because it is definitely something that I included inside of the psychological effects, and I did mention it, so I did cite it. However, I do suggest looking at the video because it definitely shows how simply being in the environment of a prison, mock or real, can definitely change who you are as a person, as well as how you treat another human being. Ultimately going into my next point. Next, I want to examine the rights given to prisoners, and are these rights the same rights that we give to citizens? Are these prisoners given the same rights while in prison as outside of prisoners? As well as how do we breed our wardens and parole officers to help or to hurt? Prisoners' rights laws deals with the rights of inmates while behind bars. Many of these laws relate to the fundamental human rights and civil liberties. This is taken from hg.org legal resources. I'm going to read a section of their website. Cruel and unusual punishments. Every inmate has the right to be free under the 8th Amendment from inhumane treatment, or anything that could be considered cruel and unusual. Unfortunately, the 8th Amendment did not clearly define what cruel and unusual punishment includes, meaning much of the definition has derived from case law. Generally speaking, any punishment that is considered inhumane treatment, like torture or abuse, or a violation of a person's basic human dignity, may be considered cruel and unusual within the discretion of the court. However, many of the instances taken from different prisons shows that this right is often violated, and even more so, prisoners are tortured by those meant to protect them. I read a journal entry called Survivors Speak, Prisoner Testimonies of Torture in the United States Prisons and Jails, and it includes different statements from various prisoners with degrading and cruel acts committed by jail and prison staff. One of them says, "A white guy came into the trailer at 12 a.m., drunk with a distinct odor in his body. He was yelling at us, calling us dumbass niggers for not eating. I still have nightmares from the experience, and I still live with fear of being sent back there and beat or killed for just being black. This was in 2014. Another one says, I've witnessed an inmate get beat up by a gang of officers for allegedly sticking his mirror out of his cell to look at a nurse. He was sent to the hospital where he died. I witnessed an inmate get denied medication for his heart, threatened by an officer if he didn't stop complaining, and returning to his cell. He died in his sleep that very night. Just recently, I witnessed an officer physically abuse an inmate during a routine pat frisk. When an inmate fought back, at least 12 other officers came running to restrain him. Then they kicked him while he laid on the floor with handcuffs on. The sergeant was overheard yelling, "Break his arm." The inmate went into a coma, once again in 2014. The last one I will read is probably one of the hardest ones to swallow. Officers locked me up in solitary confinement for 10 days, handcuffed and shackled me to a metal bed. During that time, they would extinguish their cigarette butts on my body and flip hot ashes on my face and eyes and place metal trays just out of reach. Once I yelled for water to drink, the officer rammed the nozzle of the chemical fire extinguisher to my rectum and flooded my insides with liquid and chemicals that caused me to scream with agony. Another officer told me to shut up, or he would kill me and use his boot to kick me in the head. This once again shows the torture and cruel and unusual punishment that goes on within our prison systems, ultimately defying the Eighth Amendment set out to protect these prisoners. Although they are still prisoners, they still should get the rights that they deserve. Just as the prison law states, they are guaranteed basic human rights, ultimately that are being taken away by the people that are set out to protect them. So how can we change this is ultimately the question. The Obama Initiative announces a new action to promote rehabilitation and reintegration for the formerly incarcerated. However, the true question is Obama truly answering the question set out? Is this an effective use or is this an evasive use? Is Obama really targeting the issue at hand about our prison systems? What is he really going to do? While looking at Obama's fact sheet over the initiative for prisons, the one thing that stood out to me the most was the establishing a national clean state clearhouse. It is stated on the one that he released from the White House Secretary. In the coming weeks, the Department of Labor and Department of Justice will partner to establish a national clean slate clearinghouse to provide technical assistance to local legal aid programs, public defender office, and reentry service providers to build the capacity for legal services needed to help with record cleaning and expungement and related civil legal services. Ultimately meaning that these prisoners who were put in prison will get the chance to change their lives. This is probably one of the few things Obama is doing within the initiative that I've read that's ultimately being effective rather than evasive. When I started, my stance was that prison systems are not doing their job. But as I continued to look further and research more, I realized that our prison system is entirely flawed. Not only are we imprisoning too many drug time offenders, first time nonetheless, but we are also keeping our prisoners within a loop, ultimately keeping them within the prison system. Not only is this, but President Obama isn't truly doing anything besides covering his tracks and being evasive. The most prominent thing he's doing is giving these people legal aid that they are entitled to under their Miranda rights. Not only this, but they're taking away their Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment by being tortured by the wardens who were set out to protect them and look after them. So while imprisoned, is the prison system effectively rehabilitating its inhabitants is no longer the question, but how can we fix the prison system? Our society has become one that is lost and not listening and not focusing on the true issue at hand. So what do we do now? I'll tell you what we do now. Right now, we need to be voices of change. Change for reformment. Obama's initiative is not reforming the prison system, but more so giving them rights that they were always entitled to. We need to go back and re-examine the whole purpose of the prison system. If it is to keep people that should be punished, they shouldn't be punished while inside the prison, but more so they should be seeking rehabilitation. But how can we gain that rehabilitation if they are constantly being oppressed, not only by the government, but by the people that are in charge of it? They're being kicked, killed, denied what they need. We need to take a step back from rehabilitation of the prisoners, but more so focus on the rehabilitation of the prison system. Once we figure out how to fix our prison system, and not only just figure it out, but actively do it, then we can focus on rehabilitating the prisoners. And until that happens, our prison system will end in a loop. Keep filtering in and out the same prisoners, the same type of prisoners, ultimately keeping the third of the black population within prison system. Let's be an advocate for change and change our prison systems. Then actively work to change what happens inside of the prison system. And then help get our prisoners out and rehabilitated back into society. Thank you.